10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Girls and STEAM, from Curiosity to Career on International Women's Day. We're so excited to have so many people here joining us to celebrate some of the amazing women in STEAM right here in Vancouver. Now, STEAM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Art and Design, and Math. My name is Izzy. I'm the Manager of Public Programs and Engagement here at Science World, and I will be the host for today's event. I would like to begin by gratefully acknowledging that Science World is based on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. During today's event, we're going to meet some fantastic STEAM professionals who have a ton of different. Today we have joining us Avery McIntyre and Janelle Jolly. Sadly, we don't have Hilary Highland joining us today, but that's okay. It means that we get to hear a bunch more from Avery and Janelle. Each of these women started with a passion, something that they really loved to do when they were younger, maybe something similar to what you like to do at home. And they've managed to change it into something that they do every day. Speakers, we can't wait to hear about your journeys. Before I introduce the speakers, I would like to start off by recognizing some of our partners, including STEMCELL Technology, our presenting partner, Acuitas Therapeutics, the major partner, and our premium partners, BCIT, Wells Fargo, and NSERG. It's with their support and their partnership that we're able to host events like this throughout the year. Now, our technician, Jalen, will be monitoring the chat today, so if you have any technical issues, please do pop your questions into the chat, and they'll be happy to assist. Feel free to share any questions or reactions to the presentations, and we will have time at the end of the presentation for a Q&A with our presenters as well. We do ask that you keep your comments in the chat respectful and relevant to the topics that we're covering. And remember, please don't share any personal information. We have had tons of people registering for this today. We're really excited from all over BC, even some in the US and further abroad as well. So whilst I introduced our first speaker, I'd love for you to pop in the chat where you're from and how many people are joining you today. As you're entering that into the chat, let's introduce our first speaker, Avery McIntyre. Avery is a process development scientist at STEMCELL Technologies and is passionate about mentorship and teaching. With over 10 years experience in the biotechnology industry, we can't wait to hear about how you turned your childhood curiosity into a career. We welcome to the stage, Avery. Hi, Avery.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, how are you doing?
Lovely, so excited to speak to everyone.
Wonderful. Okay, let's bring up your presentation.
All right, so as mentioned before, my name is Avery McIntyre. I actually grew up and have lived in the lower mainland of BC for my entire life, and frankly, I am so excited to be working with Science World. This alone is one of my childhood dreams. And I am a process development scientist at STEMCELL Technologies. And it's quite a mouthful. I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know that process development existed even when I graduated university. So before I do a deep dive in, I'm going to give you guys a quick who is STEMCELL and what is process science. So first off, who is STEMCELL Technologies and what do we do? STEMCELL, as mentioned already, is one of the presenting partners with Science World. We also partner up with Science World for the Girls in STEAM Summit every year. And we are one of the largest biotech companies in Canada. We have our head office in Vancouver, right near Science World, coincidentally. And we also have offices over in Europe, in China, and around the world. What we actually do is we make what's called liquid cell culture media. Again, another big, long, jumbly one, but you can really think of it like food for cells. So that's what's on the left side of the screen here. You see these little bottles with this red fluid inside. And it's called liquid cell culture media. And what the scientists in the middle of the screen will do is they'll pipette this media onto their cells and help them to grow. In some cases, they can even turn cells into different cell types. So this beautiful image on the right is something that we have called an organoid. This is where we've turned some cells into lung cells. Scientists are then able to use these lung cells to study how different diseases impact different people and how different medicines can help. So, a lot on the slide, but the gist is we make food for cells, we provide it to scientists, they make the world a better place. And we like to say that we're scientists helping scientists. So, if that's what stem cell technologies is, then still, what the heck is process development? On the left side here, you can see some of the members of our research and development team. They create these new different formulations, these new recipes for the cells to try out and eat. And you can see they're holding these tubes that are about the size of a bottle of makeup or like foundation. Now, on the right side of the screen, I'm leaning against my handy dandy overhead mixer, and it's inside of a 200-liter tank. We deal with media in like a hot tub's worth amount when we're in the process side and when we're manufacturing this for our customers. So process development scientists help to make the leap from this really small scale all the way up to this giant hot tub. The types of problems that I deal with in the day-to-day are mixing these. So if we're thinking of it like food for cells and we saw it was red, you could imagine it's like opening a Kool-Aid packet and throwing it into a jug of water. At a small scale, you've got your little wooden spoon to mix it. These little scientists, well, not little scientists, but with their little tubes, they can just shake it and it goes into solution. I can't shake a hot tub. And honestly, a wooden spoon would fall in. It'd be pretty disastrous. So I have my overhead mixer, which is more like a boat propeller that goes into the tank and mixes this giant solution of media. That's just one of the types of problems that I get to solve in the day-to-day. There's a lot of other different challenges that come up, and it's a lot of switching from one task to another and figuring out what's going on in these big tanks and what these cells want to eat. So if I didn't know what process development science was, how did I become a process development scientist? This is where some of my background comes in. When I was growing up, I had a lot of stories that were told to me that really helped me decide how I wanted to choose my career path. My dad told me growing up how his career path was laid out. He came home one day when he was 18, and his own father was sitting at the kitchen table with a piece of paper and a newspaper. He was handed the piece of paper and told to sign it. He was going to be a painter's apprentice. My dad was not interested in painting, but that was what his job was now going to be. He was then handed the newspaper, and it wasn't like today. You couldn't go on Craigslist to find an apartment. He was given the ad section for apartments and told to go find somewhere to live. It was a really harsh introduction to his career, and there really wasn't much freedom to it. So I was told from a very young age that I would have the privilege and the freedom to choose the path I wanted to pursue. And as much of a privilege and a freedom as it is, it's also a big responsibility, right? You want to make your parents proud. You want to make the most of your opportunities, knowing that there are others who don't have it. So with all this in my mind, I asked myself what I want to be when I grow up. I think this is a really relatable question for a lot of us. I don't know about you guys, but for me, I was asked this question by, I think, every adult in my life from elementary, high school, university. And I always had to have an answer on deck, ready to go. In elementary school, that answer was always teacher. By high school, it was changing already. I was working at McDonald's, I was working as a cashier at a grocery store, and I was interacting with a lot of different people. I didn't realize that there were so many different people in the world, and it was so interesting to me what made us all do these different things. I took a psychology elective and decided, that's it, I'm going to be a psychologist. I was super excited. I applied to Simon Fraser University and I got in. I got accepted into psychology. It was a dream. It was amazing. And then I took biology 12 and I realized that it wasn't really the psychology that interested me. It was all of these cool cells, all of the little things going on in the body. So I folded up that beautiful application letter. I put that dream into a file folder and I wanted to be a biologist. I actually needed to take more high school courses. So I went to Kwantlen Polytechnic University. I took some high school courses. I was moving towards my biology dreams. And on the side, I was working in a video store now. I had actually been working on finding part-time jobs that felt more me. I didn't really feel like I fit in at McDonald's or as a cashier. I didn't feel normal enough. I think many of us can relate to not fitting in or not feeling normal. I didn't, I think, know how relatable it was at the time. But this video store, I found my people. I had my little nerdy group of friends. We were selling video games, which is part of why I'm so excited to hear Jolly speak later. And yeah, it was great. So then from Kwantlen, I moved to Simon Fraser. I was realizing where I fit in part-time work. I was with my science people at Simon Fraser, and I realized I have no idea what a biologist does. I was like 4 years into this degree, having invested so much of frankly, my parents' money, thank goodness. Amazingly grateful to them. And I didn't know what it was going to mean. So I got vulnerable, I got awkward, I talked to professors. I asked them, what does it mean to be a biologist? Can I work in your lab? Can I figure out what on earth I'm going to do when I graduate? I got a couple of harsh rejections, and one very kind professor allowed me to work in his lab and do an honors thesis. So what that meant is I got to do the science. I was working with mice, I was writing papers, I was helping us look into how to help women with preeclampsia and different issues in pregnancy. It was amazing, and it was not what I wanted to do. It turns out biology didn't suit me. I didn't want to work in an academic lab. I didn't want to be working in such a small group, having so much time to really delve into the science. I liked being rushed. I liked being a cashier who had to get everything done quickly, working on a big team in McDonald's or in the video store with our little close-knit team and having that common goal. So I graduated and I was a little bit concerned. I couldn't work in biology because it didn't feel right for me. And I didn't know what else to do with a biology degree. So I Googled biotech companies. And what I found was STEMCELL Technologies. Being one of the largest in Canada, I went ahead and applied to almost every department I could see. Some departments were very kind in their rejections, where they said, we do think you're an amazing fit for stem cells culture, but my goodness, you are not a saleswoman. Finally, I wound up with 2 offers, one from STEMCELL for their manufacturing clean room. I still had no idea what that job would be, and one from an academic lab, similar to what I did in university. I took a leap. As you can imagine, I went for STEMCELL Technologies, and oh my goodness, I was relieved that I loved working in manufacturing. It was a team of about 20 people. It felt almost like McDonald's in some ways, but with science. We were all working together to get a big batch of products done by the end of the day. They needed to be consistent so our customers could rely on them to do the science they needed to do. And I spent 2 years there until I got bored again. It's a bit of a theme throughout my career. I changed my mind, and that's okay. The answer to what you want to be when you grow up is not one that stays the same. I was finding that I was actually more interested in these great big tanks I was working with and in the processes and the engineering piece of it. How do these all fit together? So I reached out to my manager, had a very awkward conversation once again in my career, and told her, I don't know that I fit here. Can you help me find where I fit? And she found 2 friends from other departments who very kindly offered their time. They had coffee with me. We talked about what I like about my job and what I didn't like. And I found process development. So now I'm more focused on the process. I still get to see where the science goes. I get to do so many different things in the day, which makes my little brain very, very happy. And I'm not done. I mean, I became a process development scientist, and I continued to redefine what my career was. I've maintained open relationships with my managers throughout my career. Even in process development, I keep talking to my manager about what I want to be when I grow up. Teaching has come back into my life before. I was able to, in collaboration with STEMCELL, take some part-time leave and volunteer in classrooms just to see if I was done with that career idea. I felt really satisfied with that. I put a pin in it and decided I was happy with process development. I continued talking to my manager. We found other ways to work mentorship in. It's part of why I'm here today speaking with you, is that we collaborate with Science World, and they kindly offered me opportunities to work with young people who are trying to figure out what they're interested in. And I'm still thinking about what I want to be when I grow up. I'm not done. Nobody is done. My 3-year-old actually is old enough now to tell me what I want to be when I grow up. I am going to be an astronaut, apparently, because he doesn't want to go into space alone. I disagree slightly. I think that maybe when my children are grown, I might go back to school and become a midwife. Who knows? I guess what I'm really trying to say to you all here today is I want you to be open and to be curious, to really be vulnerable and have those awkward conversations. Think about where you want to be. And yeah, stay curious in your journey to figuring out how you can show up to a job and authentically be yourself. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you all today.
Thank you so much, Avery. That's amazing. What an incredible story.
Yeah.
I love that you were able to use your part-time jobs in McDonald's and those other things to kind of help define what you wanted to do as a full-time job as well, not just your kind of your passion and your interest, but the stuff that you do on the like every day to kind of create and find out exactly what it is that you liked in a work environment. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Avery. We're going to be bringing back our speakers at the end for some Q&A. So do hold your questions and we'll be bringing back Avery in just a few moments. Before I bring up our next speaker, I wanted just to do a few shout outs to the folk that we have here with us today. So hello, Rose Point in Vancouver, and your grade 4 class. We've also got some folk from North Vancouver, Kelowna, all the way up in Squamish and down in Commercial Drive as well. We've got some folk from a little further away. Hi, Jessica Short from Dayton, Ohio. Really great to have you with us. We've got some folk joining us from England as well, so all the way across the ocean. So thank you, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today to celebrate International Women's Day. So I'm going to introduce our next presenter. And the person we're bringing up now is Janelle, aka Jolly. Jolly's always loved playing video games ever since her parents gave her a Nintendo when she was little. And you followed this passion all the way to becoming the Quality Assurance Director for NHL at EA. Jolly, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here.
We're so excited to have you. I'll hand on over so we can hear from you.
Sounds wonderful. First off, thank you so much for Science World for giving me kind of a platform to share my journey. I guess I'll just kind of get right to it. So basically, my name is Janelle Jolly. Everyone just calls me Jolly. I am a QA development director currently at Electronic Arts over in Burnaby, British Columbia. We make video games, and right now my career is in game testing. And yes, game testing does sound like you're playing video games all day, but it's a lot more than that. Anyone that knows too much about game testing is actually in a field called quality assurance. And so I'm going to just go into a little bit as to what quality assurance is. So first off, we got to talk about what quality is. Everyone can define quality in their own way, but it's hard to define what does quality mean. And quality mainly just means expectations. If something is meeting your expectations, it's usually a quality product. Well, in game development, we have a lot of expectations. The beauty about game development is that we have so many people in so many fields that do so many things. We have artists, we have animators, we have renderers, programmers, people who do automation, telemetry, people who do level design, which could change if you're doing an action game versus a racing game. And then you have game designers, you have people who design economies, and we have marketing. There's something for everyone in game development, which is one reason I absolutely adore it. And quality assurance, it is our job to essentially know what all those expectations for everyone. And then when everyone is contributing towards the workload, we essentially get to see it all come together because everyone's kind of working in their own little area sometimes. So when we see the features come together, how does this art and animation work with this particular thing? If someone is adding in a new skill for a character, does that cause an imbalance in the game? We try and figure that out. And in quality assurance, we then interpret what those expectations are, and we create what's called test strategies to figure out a way that we can measure and communicate where quality is to the people who own those features, as well as a bunch of other things. So yeah, that's essentially quality in a nutshell. And regarding to quality assurance, there's a lot of things. If quality is not being met, what we do is we capture those things in what is called bugs. And bugs are essentially defects where it is not meeting quality. What do you want to do with it? So I'm sure everyone here who does play video games has encountered their fair share of bugs. Not always QA fault, sometimes it is. And what I do as a game tester is there's a lot of different fields in game testing. There are people who just kind of find surface level bugs, meaning you boot up a game and it is very easy to find what is wrong. But I'm actually built my career on being an embedded tester. And that means we sit with development and we are part of design meetings sometimes. And then we look over the feature briefs, which is outlining everything, the technical briefs. What do you want to design? And then we also find experiential bugs, which are bugs which are meeting expectations from everyone, but it might not meet the expectations of the users. So a good example of this is if there's a driving game and there is a sign that you're driving towards and it is on the other side of the road, that's not actually what you would expect from a driving, because if there's a sign you need to read, it's usually on your side of the road. Little stuff like that. So my role is essentially trying to figure out what those expectations are. Now, you're also dealing with the expectations of the people who make the consoles, which means there's a lot of people made by Android. iOS is made by Apple. You also have Sony and Microsoft. And then depending on what publisher you're dealing with. So this is an example of some of the platforms I've tested on, as well as the publishers we've had to deal with. And they all have their own expectations, what the end result is. And finally, you have your project. Your project also has different expectations, meaning that when, if your game is for children, you might have a different standard than if your game is for, say, like a sports game or something. So this is my portfolio of games that I have worked with over the last 11 years. Wow. And my very first game I have ever worked with was in 2014. That was my first AAA game. And currently I'm on NHL 25, which is out right now. And I am in production for NHL 26. And then in a few months, I'll be in pre-production for NHL 27 as well. So it's a lot of very rapid. It's quite fun though. And I love what we do. And then there's those question boxes on the right. Those are games that I worked on that just never got released. And that is very common in games. So the thing is, that was 11 years I've done. I am 41 right now. So what was I doing between being a child and 30? That doesn't mean I actually didn't contribute towards my career. Everything I did led me to where I am now. But the last 11 years is really what a lot of people see. So I'm going to walk you through my journey. And in that journey, I made sure to put the timeline up top. So kid and teen, whatever, and then what my target was. Because exactly as Avery said, everyone asks, what do you want to be? Well, when I was young, a kid and teen, I just wanted a job. That sounds very generic, but I had a few challenges on my side. So I was actually born in Kelowna, BC. All my family's there, and I was born in 1983. My very first gaming system wasn't a Nintendo Entertainment System. This was before the days that even a save file was achievable until Zelda cartridge came out. But I had a few challenges, and everyone has challenges. So these were like my mountains to climb. I had Tourette's syndrome, which wasn't very common in women at the time. I also had autism. Now, what Tourette's syndrome is voluntary sort of twitches. So I essentially would be stuttering, and it is associated with people swearing, unfortunately. I didn't swear. I used to say sorry a lot. That would drive people crazy. So when I was in public, I would kind of twitch or do shoulder stuff, and it was really difficult. And then with my autism, that came with a few other things. It came with learning disabilities, which primarily were due to not being able to speak correctly. I had to take several years of intensive speech therapy, 5 days a week, several years to even learn to speak. I did do a bit of sign language to cope with that. And then I had a hearing impairment that wasn't really diagnosed until I was 10, which just meant that I could hear fine. But the problem is sometimes words just sound as noise to me, because if my brain is tired, I can't actually translate that sound. That resulted to struggling a lot in school. I had a very difficult time. But I gamed a lot, because when I was failing in school, I was succeeding in games, at least. It felt really good to do that level, finish that achievement, or just essentially accomplish something. And eventually, when online gaming happened, which honestly wasn't even available until I was in high school, I joined guilds. And guilds are like little clubs that you can do activities with. And I love doing that. I used to raid, I used to do dungeons with people. It was my social thing, because I didn't really have a lot of friends. What I learned during that experience as a kid and teen is games are really my freedom. They help treat my Tourette's. So if I was ever in a state where I needed to twitch a lot, I could do video games. And my parents were very supportive of it, because it was a lot of pain relief and stress relief. I also knew I didn't want to be disabled. I had labels that hindered me, that I felt were oppressive, and I had a lot of education I had to do with people who maybe looked at me and saw me twitching and stuff and didn't think I was like worth it. But then I also realized everyone had their own challenges. I grew up with having a brother who was special needs. He was deaf and blind. And so looking at him, it could always have gotten a little bit worse. So I changed a bit of my target once I was able to adapt myself so that I could step up and be able to be like, yo, you know what? I can do this. And what that meant is art. I was like, I can do art. I like art and games. That's great. I'm going to combine my two hobbies and I'm going to go at it. So what happened is I attended college in 3D art in Kelowna, actually. And what happened is after those 2 years there, I realized a few things. Is I wasn't that great at art. Everyone was better than me. And that was sad because for me, I always felt like my good was not good enough. And I was a perfectionist. So what happened is after I graduated, luckily my first job in the industry wasn't art. It was an indie studio that was in Kelowna. We worked across the street from a gaming company called Penguin at the time. And I spent 4 years working on a video game that was to teach, ironically, children how to be bilingual. So I ended up being an assistant producer for a linguistics team. There's a lot of irony in that. And unfortunately, that game never came out. And when you work on a video game in the industry, that game doesn't come out. You can't talk about it. You can't really share it. You can't do too much because of NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement. And so I wasn't sure what to do. I was working on this game that really wasn't going anywhere, and there was no jobs in my city. But I did learn a few things. Is hobbies don't always translate to jobs. I love art. Art was my de-stressor. And I realized that when I was doing art all day, it wasn't helping my stress. It was just causing it. And it was just not fun. And I was so bored with it. So I also learned that I learned a lot through failing. Yeah, I didn't end up succeeding a lot, but I was able to take away a lot of things from that. And there's a quote I like said, calm seas don't make great sailors. It's because if you want to be a great sailor, you have to experience some turbulent waters time to time. With that said too, I know I wanted to be in games. So that was good. So what could I do? So I changed my career goal and I said, okay, I want to be a game designer for AAA games specifically. I'm like, I don't want to do indie anymore. Indie is wonderful, by the way, but for me, I kind of wanted to work with a bigger team. So I looked for scholarships because I didn't really want my parents to pay for college too much. And there was a Women in Games scholarship that Vancouver Film School was offering. I applied, I was able to win it as the Canadian winner, and it was absolutely incredible. I learned how to code. I learned how to do more art, how to do design briefs, how to implement those designs. We even designed board games. It was wonderful. And we ended up getting a lot of mentors helping with our projects in there. And I love those mentors. And one of those mentors actually hired me to work on the game that he was working on, which was Sleeping Dogs over at United Front Games, also in Vancouver. And it was a dream job for me. I got to test video games all day. What I learned is you're never too old to learn, because I was quite older. This was when I was 29 to 32. Everyone was quite a bit younger than me, but that was okay. We were all kind of coming there to learn. And I built a network of really great people. How I worked at school, how I conducted myself, that equated to, hey, I want to work with that person. And that's incredible. So definitely respect your network. But I made a terrible realization is I didn't like game design. I didn't want to sit writing a document that is sometimes 100 to 200 pages. I really didn't want to do it. And I was like, oh no, what do I do? I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was in the gaming industry, so that was kind of good enough. And so what happened is I realized I loved game testing. It was so great. And by the way, you don't have to be great at games to be a good game tester. I am a very average gamer. In fact, some games I am terrible at, but I found some really good bugs. And the main thing is I try to just play the game on different ways, different controllers. We do what's called persona testing. I would play as if this is my first adventure game, or I'd play as if I'm Achiever, or I'd play as if I want to explore everything. There's different ways to do that. But QA also had a stigma. Quality assurance was just an entry-level job, not a career in games, where everyone had to go into QA in order to put in their time to get a producer job or a coding job or a game design job. That was just the expectation of the industry. Essentially, you go in there, you don't get paid a lot, you work massive overtime, and then you get hired as a designer. That just seemed to be the culture. But I was actually used as these companies in ways I never expected to. Is I was used as a problem solver. So in 1 year, I was changed projects 6 times because they needed people who needed training. They had a risk on a feature that they weren't able to articulate. People weren't able to communicate correctly on what they wanted from QA versus what the producers want. So I'd go in there and kind of clear up the language, just ask the basic questions. And then eventually I was really encouraged to be a team leader, which as an introvert and as someone who really didn't have a lot of social stuff was absolutely terrifying. And I thought they were crazy. But the thing is, as I was facilitating communication and I was advocating for people. And so I apprenticed to be a producer, and I was able to do some producing job for Disney Infinity after I was a team lead for the first time for Marvel Battlegrounds, which was a game that we did in collaboration with Marvel for the release of Captain Civil War. Well, what did I learn? I learned that I actually like designing processes, not game design. Processes were great. I adored it. So when Avery was speaking, I was like, oh, yes, exactly. Processes are different. Processes are how we do things and why we do it. And is it efficient? Is it the right people? And I loved collaborating. I loved problems. I love it when people had an issue and be like, okay, let's walk through it. And it didn't necessarily mean that even I'd be the solution, but I would help them get the solution. I also really challenged my own bias. I thought the QA could be worth the investment. And I thought QA would be improving in games because the quality of games were sort of going down. And the reason why that is because the user expectations were so high. Nowadays, a lot of users, when they play video games, they expect to be online. They expect a lot of achievements. Sometimes they want a competitive mode. Sometimes they want to be able to share with their friends. Sometimes they want open world. Sometimes they want the games to be 120 hours of content. It is really difficult. And so when I was looking at that, I thought, you know what? I think this is a career. And I disagree that with a lot of gaming studios and a lot of culture, that this is just a step-in job. I think if you have an incredible person in QA, facilitate that and you invest in it, you might get better quality. And then I made a huge discovery is my challenges could be superpowers. And what do I actually mean by that? Is due to my autism, I had a lot of learning challenges. Things were just not clear to me. I was very literal. So I got in the habit of asking a lot of questions, and I was not afraid of being the most dumbest person in the room. And because of that, I ask very good questions when I'm in meetings because I'm not as self-conscious. Due to my Tourette's, I had to really check my own bias and check other people's bias. If they're seeing people twitch, then, are they having an issue? That doesn't necessarily mean that they're crazy, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're dumb. Because of that, I empowered myself to advocate for myself, and that translated well to advocating for others, as well as advocating for risks, advocating for the user in a game, and trying to find the right language. Due to my hearing problems, I took a lot of notes. A lot of those notes and learning material actually became onboarding to train people. And what happened is my failures related to a lot of diverse skills, and were able to communicate a lot more effectively because even though I wasn't a master of everything, I was able to at least learn a little bit of something to appreciate and empathize with my team members. And the last thing is gaming. I did a lot of gaming. I was doing raid leaders, I was doing healing, and that translated ironically to leadership. I've never been to school for management. I have taken a lot of courses, but that was learning how to lead and how to collaborate respectively with people. That's really important. So I decided to change my career to be a quality advocate for change, but I want to refine that language. And my target then became, I want to be a problem solver to improve game quality, not necessarily work on this particular thing on the game, just improve it in general. So what happened is I committed myself to the QA role. I said, I want to stay in QA. I believe this is worth it. And a lot of people did too. And the industry changed. They invested in people who wanted to stay in quality, saying, no, we need to invest in this. I even leaned into it further. I taught QA at Vancouver Film School, where I even graduated. And I did that for about 4 or 5 years. Then eventually in my career, I became a manager. I was able to facilitate a bunch of stuff. And now I'm at Electronic Arts as a director for NHL on QA, where I don't just do management of people. What I actually do is do a little bit of what's called quality design, where we articulate what these problems are, figuring out what these processes. Do we need data? Do we need telemetry? Do we need all these other processes? What tools can we have? Looking at user sentiment, figuring out a way to translate that and surface that, and then trying to figure out what can we do better. And when you're working on a game year over year, like sports, you get that information a lot. And EA is very committed to trying to improve their quality, which is amazing. And working on those kind of teams, I've been incredible. And I'm also able to travel worldwide because of that, which is great. Now I feel like I'm living my best life. What I learned is you can design your own job. If you're doing something really good, people can value that as long as you're contributing something. And there's other styles of leadership. There's not just a boss and a leader. There's various different ways. Sometimes you have to find your own. And the people who manage you or the leaders you look up to might not necessarily be your style. And then I realized I really like helping teams help the game. I don't need to be the one in game and contributing towards things. If I'm enabling people and making sure that they're able to escalate the problems, excellent. I'm very happy doing that. My advice is careers change. So do your values. Change with it. Exactly what Avery said. Look, you change, you evolve, change with it. Identify how you contribute. If you're going to be loving what you do, find out what you bring value. You could be joining a team and you might not be the best person for that job, but you might be the best person in that group for that job. Your challenges can be experiences. Don't view them as roadblocks. Everyone has their mountains. And if you get into a mindset that this is my challenge and no one else is going through what I'm going through, that's wrong. Everyone has their own challenges. Everyone has their own things going on in life, and view them as mountains. Those are your own individual experience. How can you make them superpowers? Just try. Failing is learning. It doesn't mean that you lost the war. It doesn't mean necessarily you're not doing anymore, but failure is learning. Last thing is have fun. You got to have fun. And the most important takeaway I hope you do is you love what you do. Because if you love what you do, you're going to be passionate, you're going to be curious, and you're going to just succeed. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And if anyone does want to connect, there's my LinkedIn and there's my email in case anyone wants to connect, have questions or feedback. Thank you so much.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Jolly. That's amazing. I love that end message around really doing what you love and not being afraid to talk about it as well and to push for that career. I think is such a valuable lesson. And yeah, your experience is fantastic all the way through from that first Nintendo game you've played all the way up to now, and how every little piece of your life has kind of helped shape that. It's not just what you study in school that changes everything. It's everything about your life that kind of helps you get to that career.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you so much. We're going to move on to a Q&A session now. So we have about 10 minutes for some questions and answers. So we'll bring back Avery to the screen as well. Hi, Avery. We've already got some questions in from YouTube. So we'll go straight along with those. If you have other questions, everyone online, please don't be afraid to pop them into the chat and we'll try and get through as many as possible. So I guess this first one I think probably applies to both of you, around mentorship. Have you ever had a mentor? And when you have had one, how do you find a good mentor that's a good fit for you?
Yeah, so I can speak a bit to this. I know I mentioned in my presentation, even with the professors in university, I got shot down. Like you have to be very brave and very vulnerable to find a mentor, because there is an aspect to it where you're asking something of someone else. And yeah, if it doesn't work out, you just have to accept that that's okay and try again. It's almost like applying for a job. Sometimes it is a bit of a numbers game and a luck game, but just being open about what you need and being persistent, I think.
Love that. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess for a mentorship is trying to figure out what you want to learn from them. Someone can be a mentor, but it's not like you're trying to be them. If they have a specific skill that you want to learn, be very specific in the language you use, saying, I'd like to learn that. My mentor in leadership, he was incredible. And I chose him because I loved his leadership style. He was very unique in that. And I wanted to figure out how and why he did that. I also have mentors in data and everything else. And mentorship is so important. But again, be specific in what you want to learn from them. And once you learn from them, it's okay to just kind of upgrade or change and gain new perspectives. So you can cycle your mentorship, but I would think your values and what you want to learn from them is good. Do not do the same mistake a lot of people do, saying, I want that person to be my mentor and just teach me all the things. Don't do that. Yeah. We don't know what to do with that. So just try to be specific.
I love that. I think, having multiple mentors for different specific skills, that's really important, something I hadn't really thought about. Thank you. I have a question. We've got a question that's come in asking a little bit more detail about what kind of liquid you create at STEMCELL and what exactly is it used for?
For sure. So when I say it's food for cells, you can actually take that kind of literally. Human cells are tiny parts of you, which means they need the same nutrients you need. So you can think about the food you like. A lot of it is probably, if you're anything like me, sugary or carby. So we'll actually add glucose to water. Sometimes we like things like chips. Salt is important for cells. That's part of why we crave chips. So a lot of different nutrients. Sometimes I call it Gatorade for cells because there's a lot of amino acids and proteins, all that good stuff. And then as far as what it's used for, a lot of times with stem cell technologies, we'll get researchers who follow our protocol. They put stem cells into one type of media, change it into another, and now they've turned into a blood cell, change it into another, and now it's a more specific type of blood cell. And now they can study this blood disease. But yeah, I think that's it in a nutshell.
That's cool. So it's literally feeding the cells, like you would you're kind of a restaurant for these.
Yeah. And like inside, normally it's blood doing that. But in
Mhm.
the cell culture, you don't have blood to bring nutrients. So instead, you're using this liquid media to bring those nutrients that you would normally eat.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. Thank you, Avery. We've got a whole bunch of questions. I think you've hit a point. Everyone, we've got a lot of gamers online here. Jolly. Let me have a look. What's some of the questions that we can do? Okay.
Love the gaming culture.
Love the gaming culture. Yeah, maybe.
And Avery's a gamer too.
Avery's a gamer too. I think maybe having it as a live stream it's a good platform for the game.
So true.
So a question here from Carrie. Do you always test the same game, or are there multiple games that you work on? And how many people do you have? Many people testing that game?
Yeah, it actually depends on the game being made and how many people are testing in-house with the development as opposed to testing elsewhere. So in game development, we actually have a project cycle. We have pre-production, which is what are we making, and sometimes proving can we make it. And that's when you get all your designs down, your documentation, because you need to put in all that work before it even gets approved, because no one's going to give you money to make that game unless you can tell you what you're designing. Then we have production, which is when people are putting in all the work. Then we have alpha, which the functionality should be complete. Then we have beta, where it should be everything is representative. And then we have final. So what happens is during production, you can get QA and they're a bit early and mid-cycle. So you don't need a large QA team at all. And you only need like a few people. And usually they're embedded because we're trying to test things maybe no one can access because we need tools. Then we scale up our QA team around mid-production to late, around that alpha, and then alpha beta. That's when we really hit our peak. And it's actually not a 1-to-1 ratio. There's a lot of different things when you're looking at a game to determine how many people you need. But you usually will only have a very, very small few embedded testers, and then your team externally. Sometimes there'll be like one embedded tester for every 5 testers that are elsewhere. And sometimes we use that externally so that the game can get 24-hour treatment. Right now we use India, but we have used Romania. I've done testers in Poland before, even Montreal. So they're all over the world. And yeah, so it really depends. What I will say though is your embedded testers, you don't need a lot of them because they're worth their weight in gold.
Mm. Wow, fascinating. It takes a team, hey? It takes a team.
And the project cycle, yeah. What do you expect from them?
Yeah.
There's nothing to test.
Another question for the both of you. You both spoke about kind of overcoming challenges, people saying no, that kind of thing. How have you gotten over these challenges? Because yeah, as Martinez asked, sometimes it can feel really sad if something doesn't go the way you want it to. How do you kind of pick yourself up from those?
Oh my goodness, it can be hard. It's okay to cry. I will absolutely say that with some of these things getting shot down, I got upset. I went home to my parents, showed them the email from the professor, or I went home to my parents and said, "Oh my goodness, I don't want to be a psychologist anymore, and I can't go to university now." I think just letting yourself be sad is okay. And if you have a really good support system, talking to someone you feel comfortable telling that you have failed or that you didn't do what you expected. Granted, I'm a chatty person, but that's usually how I handle that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess for challenges, we deal with challenges every day, project risks. Whenever there's economy changes, that obviously impacts games. With the A being as massive as it is, there's a lot of times where sometimes even our project might need to help other projects. I think where it comes to challenges on both a personal and a work-related thing is to step back and figure out who are your stakeholders that are going to help you with the solution, and really identify what is in your power to change versus what is not. What could you influence? And if you can't change certain things, don't worry about it. And that sounds a lot easier than not, but then you use your support group, just as Avery said, and getting that validation going, am I being crazy? Like, does no one else see this risk? Being able to talk to someone and going, okay, you're not crazy, but yes, this is scary. is important. Being able to separate emotion from being able to, okay, I feel this, great, but what's the solution?
Yeah.
Solution. Identify who can do it. And if you need to, get stakeholders into a room and just talk about it, workshop it. It's incredible because different perspectives can help a lot of things, and you might not be the one who's going to fix it.
Yeah. And sometimes challenges are actually really fun. Like the ones I was speaking about before were the ones that made me sad. But if I'm being honest, part of why I like process development, and my team can attest to this, is I laugh when I get challenges now because it's going to be a fun thing. We're going to have to figure it out. It's not the end of the world. So yeah, sometimes challenges can be fun instead of sad. It depends on the thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Absolutely. I think that that's probably a fantastic place to end on that note. Challenges can be fun. I'm afraid we haven't had time to get through all the questions. There's a lot of them out there. Thank you so much for all of your questions, everyone, and for being so engaged. But I'm afraid that is all that we have time for at the moment. Before we go, just want to again thank our presenting partners, STEMCELL Technologies, our major partner, Acuitas Therapeutic, and our premium partners, Wells Fargo, BCIT, and NSERC. For all of our teachers and parents who are out there, do keep an eye out for an email from myself. This email will contain a follow-up activity that can be used to continue the discussion around STEAM careers with your classes. We'll also be sending out a short feedback form about this event, and would love if you're able to fill it out, as this helps us to keep making these events more and more informative and better and better. If you're interested in seeing any part of this program again, this stream will stay active with the recording. You can access it from the same link, or you can find it on YouTube as well. For other information about other Girls in STEAM events, just check out the Science World website. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Janelle, aka Jolly, and thank you, Avery, so much. It was wonderful to chat with you, and happy International Women's Day.
Yay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.